The lost wallet in the lonely street. The night was cold on the lower levels of the galactic capital. Neon lights flickered weakly against walls covered in rust and old posters. Rain poured endlessly from the upper tiers, dripping down into the forgotten streets where only the poor and hopeless lived. Among them was a small alien girl named Lyra. Her skin had a faint blue glow, and her eyes, large and silver, reflected the sadness of the city around her. Lyra had no home, no family, and no friends. She slept under metal bridges and warmed herself beside broken energy vents. Every morning she searched the trash piles, hoping to find scraps of food or something she could sell. Her thin cloak was soaked with rain, and her small hands trembled as she walked through the alleyways. She had learned long ago that no one helped street aliens, especially not a human. That night, while walking near a closed cafe, she saw something shining under a puddle at first. She thought it was just another piece of junk. But when she picked it up, her heart skipped a beat. It was a wallet. Thick, heavy, and golden, engraved with strange symbols she didn't understand. When she opened it carefully, light from a holographic seal flashed across her face. The seal of the Terran diplomatic corps. Inside were strange metallic cards, digital credits, and a glowing identity chip. Her hungry stomach growled. She could sell this and eat for a whole month, maybe even rent a small pod room for a few nights. She looked around. No one saw her. The rain grew louder. Her hands shook as she closed the wallet. Then from deep inside she heard her mother's voice, a faint memory from years ago. Lyra, honesty is the only treasure that cannot be stolen. She froze. That voice, soft and full of love, came from a past destroyed by war. Tears mixed with the rain on her face. She whispered to herself, I should give it back, even though no one could hear her. But the other homeless aliens noticed her treasure. An old insectoid beggar hissed, You found a Terran's wallet? Sell it before they find you. Humans don't care about us, a group of kids laughed. You think he'll thank you? He'll have you arrested. But Lyra didn't listen. Something inside her felt warm, a strange strength she hadn't felt in years. She tucked the wallet close to her chest and began walking toward the upper levels. She had never been there. Not once in her life. The higher she went, the cleaner the streets became. Robots cleaned the floors. Drones floated by, scanning everyone. Each step she took made her heart race faster. The guards at the gate stared at her dirty clothes and alien features. No access to unauthorized species, one barked. Lyra held up the wallet with both hands. Please. It belongs to a human named Elias Grant. I found it in the lower district. The guard frowned. Scanning the hologram seal, his eyes widened. Then he called another officer. Soon a small hover car arrived. She was taken into it without a word. Raindrops streaked across the window as she looked out, scared but hopeful. When the car stopped, she found herself in front of a massive white building surrounded by banners and flags. The Terran embassy. Everything gleamed. The guards were tall humans in dark uniforms. She felt tiny among them. One of them looked down and asked, You said you found this? She nodded, clutching it tightly. I didn't take anything, sir, she said softly. The guard led her inside. Marble floors reflected the ceiling lights. She left wet footprints as she walked. Everyone stared at her, secretaries, aides, and officers, whispering things she didn't understand. Finally, a door opened and a man in a black diplomatic coat walked in. His eyes were sharp but kind. This was Ambassador Elias Grant. For a moment, he looked puzzled at the small alien girl standing before him. You found this? He asked. She nodded silently, her voice trembling. Yes, sir, it was on the street. I thought you might need it. He opened the wallet, checked the contents. Everything was there. Not a single credit missing, his assistant whispered. Should we report her, sir? She must have stolen it first, but Elias shook his head. No, she didn't. He looked at Lyra again. Why didn't you keep it? Lyra looked down, her wet hair sticking to her face. Because it wasn't mine, she said simply. That answer hit him harder than he expected. In all his years dealing with politics, lies and greed, no one had spoken to him so honestly. He slowly knelt down, placing his hand on her shoulder. What's your name? He asked gently. Lyra, she whispered. Outside the embassy, the storm began to calm. Thunder faded into silence. Elias stood up and said, Lyra, come with me. His staff looked shocked. Sir, she's... But he ignored them. Leading the trembling alien girl to his private office, he handed her a towel and a plate of food. She stared at it, unable to believe it was real. As she ate slowly, Elias looked out the window at the dark city below. He knew that what happened tonight wasn't ordinary. This small act of honesty from a homeless alien girl had reminded him of something he thought humanity had lost long ago. Compassion outside. Drones captured the image of the human diplomat giving shelter to a filthy street alien. By morning, the footage would go viral across the galaxy. But for now, inside that quiet room, it was just a man and a child, and the beginning of a story that would change everything. The diplomat and his disbelief the next morning. Light from the twin suns poured through the wide glass windows of the Terran embassy. Warm and golden inside, the quiet hum of security drones mixed with the low chatter of diplomats. Everyone was whispering about the same thing. The human ambassador had brought a filthy street alien into his quarters. Ambassador Elias Grant sat at his desk, staring at the golden wallet on the table. It looked ordinary now, just metal and light, yet he couldn't stop thinking about the small blue girl who had returned it. In his world, filled with politicians and greedy traitors, honesty had become a forgotten word. His assistant, a nervous young officer named Ramos, entered. "Sir, the girl is still in the waiting room. What do you want us to do with her?" Elias leaned back, eyes tired. "What does she want?" Ramos hesitated. "Nothing, sir. She hasn't asked for food, money, or even shelter. She just keeps sitting quietly, watching the rain." Elias nodded slowly. "Bring her in." When the door opened, Lyra stepped inside carefully, her small hands folded together. Her clothes had been cleaned but still looked worn. Her eyes looked brighter under the morning light. She didn't speak, just stood there, unsure whether to bow or run. Elias smiled faintly. "You slept well?" She nodded. "Yes, sir, thank you." Her voice was soft, almost musical. Elias gestured to the seat. "You did something rare, Lyra. Most people would have kept the wallet." She looked at the floor. "My mother told me, honesty keeps your soul warm when the world turns cold." That simple sentence made something stir deep inside him. For years he had watched humans and aliens alike fight, betray, and deceive for power. But here stood a child from the gutter, who still believed in doing the right thing. His communicator buzzed suddenly, breaking the silence. "Ambassador, you're due in the Galactic Council meeting in 10 minutes, Ramos reminded him. Elias sighed. "Of course." He stood up, then looked at Lyra again. "Come with me." The guards at the door stared in disbelief. "Sir, the council, they'll live," Elias interrupted. The hallways of the upper district were wide and bright, filled with marble statues and floating banners. Lyra walked behind him, amazed by everything she saw. But everyone they passed gave her the same cold look. Humans, and aliens in fine clothes whispering as they stared. When they reached the council chamber, the guards stopped them. "Only officials beyond this point." Elias crossed his arms. "She's with me." The guards exchanged glances but stepped aside. Inside the room, a large oval table floated in midair, surrounded by 12 alien representatives and human diplomats. The meeting began. Filled with political arguments about trade laws and border disputes, Elias tried to focus, but his eyes kept drifting toward Lyra, who stood quietly by the wall, watching the strange creatures speak in different tongues. She didn't understand the politics, but she understood one thing. Most of these people didn't care about others. They cared only about themselves. Halfway through the meeting, a tall reptilian ambassador noticed her, his scales glittering under the light. "Ambassador Grant," he hissed, "why is there a child in this sacred chamber?" Elias replied calmly, "Because sometimes we forget what decency looks like." The room fell silent for a moment. Murmurs followed when the session ended. Reporters flooded the entrance. Cameras flashing, one journalist shouted, "Ambassador Grant, who is that alien girl with you?" Another yelled, "Are you adopting her?" Elias placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder protectively. "She's someone who reminded me that honesty still exists in this galaxy." The statement spread like wildfire across the news networks. Within hours, every broadcast in the capital showed clips of a young alien girl beside a Terran diplomat. Social media erupted. Some praised Elias for his compassion, others mocked him, accusing him of playing politics with pity. Inside the embassy, Ramos looked at the newsfeed nervously. "Sir, the council office is demanding an explanation. They say your actions are unconventional." Elias chuckled softly. That's what they always say when someone does the right thing. Meanwhile, Lyra sat near the window, watching the city skyline. Air trains glided between towers like glowing ribbons for the first time in her life. She wasn't invisible. She felt both seen and scared. She turned to Elias. "Sir, am I in trouble?" Elias looked up from his desk. "No, Lyra, not you." The trouble is with people who think kindness is weakness. Later that evening, when the embassy grew quiet, Lyra stood on the balcony. The stars stretched endlessly above. She whispered softly to herself, "I just returned a wallet. Why is everyone talking about me?" Elias heard her from the doorway. Because sometimes small actions show bigger truths than speeches ever can. He walked beside her, pointing at the distant stars. "See that one? That's Earth, my home," she smiled faintly. "It's beautiful." He nodded. "It wasn't always. Humans destroyed much before they learned to build again. That's why your honesty matters. It reminds us who we're supposed to be." Far below in the lower city, people watched her face on glowing screens. Some cheered, some cursed. But every single person knew her name now, Lyra, the alien girl who did what no one expected. And while the galaxy argued, the human diplomat made a quiet decision that would change both their lives forever. He summoned his aide and said simply, "Prepare the documents, she's staying here." "Under my care," Ramos blinked. "As what, sir?" Elias smiled. "As family." Outside, lightning flashed far across the horizon, as if the stars themselves had noticed the shift, because in that moment, an invisible thread of destiny connected a lonely alien child and a weary human diplomat. A thread that would soon shake the very foundations of the galaxy. The viral miracle by the next morning. The galaxy had already changed across billions of screens. An image of a small blue alien girl standing beside a human diplomat flashed again and again. News anchors repeated her name. Lyra, the homeless alien who returned a Terran ambassador's wallet. From the shining cities of Earth to the cold colonies on Titan, everyone had an opinion. Some called her a symbol of hope. Others accused her of being part of a publicity stunt. On the net streams, endless debates erupted. Can aliens feel honor? Is the Terran diplomat trying to manipulate emotions? Yet beneath all the noise, one quiet truth kept echoing. Honesty still mattered. Inside the Terran embassy, the mood was tense. Reporters camped outside the gates, hovering drones buzzed through the air, trying to catch a glimpse of the girl who had captured the galaxy's heart. Lyra sat on the couch near the window, holding a cup of warm tea with both hands, her silver eyes wide as she watched herself on the hollow screen. She couldn't believe it. Yesterday she had been invisible, another forgotten soul in the slums. Now her face shone across every planet. Elias walked in, still dressed in his formal coat, a tired smile on his lips. "You're famous, Lyra," he said gently. She looked up nervously. "Is that bad?" Elias chuckled softly. "Not if you stay true to who you are." At that same moment, across the Galactic Council Tower, political chaos brewed. Rival diplomats from other species argued that Elias had violated protocol by bringing a non-citizen into human diplomatic protection. "He's using her for sympathy," one hissed. "He's weakening human authority," said another. But Elias didn't care. He had already seen something purer than politics. Truth. Later that day, Lyra stepped outside the embassy garden for the first time. Her feet touched real grass instead of metal floors. Birds from Earth sang in artificial trees. She closed her eyes and smiled. "It feels alive," she whispered. Elias stood nearby, hands folded behind his back. "It's the embassy's peace garden," he explained. "Every species we've made peace with has a plant here." She tilted her head. "Will my people ever have one?" Elias paused, his smile fading slightly. "Maybe one day." Unseen by them, a small drone recorded that exact moment. A little alien girl touching a flower with wonder, while a human looked on kindly. Within hours, the clip went viral. Millions watched and shared it. Comments flooded in. Hope still exists. Maybe we aren't so different. Even soldiers at far-off outposts played the video during their shifts. But fame also brings shadows from the depths of the net. Hate groups began spreading lies, saying Lyra was a spy, that she had planted a tracker in the diplomat's wallet. Others demanded she be deported. Threats appeared in comments. "Send the creature back to the gutters. Humans first." When Elias saw the headlines, his jaw tightened. He knew the galaxy's heart could turn as fast as it opened. He ordered his staff. "No one speaks ill of her in this building. Not while I'm here." Ramos nodded nervously. Watching the growing storm outside that evening, Lyra sat quietly in the corner of the library, surrounded by tall shelves and old books. She was trying to read human stories, fairy tales about honesty and courage. "Your people like happy endings," she said softly. Elias looked up from his datapad. We try to believe in them. She smiled faintly. Then maybe I can have one too. He closed his datapad. You already started one, he said. A soft chime interrupted them. A call from the Galactic Education Directorate. Ambassador Grant, the holographic face said. We've seen the broadcasts and the Council has decided to offer the alien girl a scholarship. Full funding, any academy of your choice. Elias blinked in surprise. That's unexpected. The official smiled stiffly. Public relations are powerful tools. Ambassador, use them well, the call ended. Leaving Elias thoughtful the next morning, Lyra wore her first real uniform, a simple white dress with the emblem of the Terran Peace Academy. As she stood before the mirror, she barely recognized herself. I look like someone else, she murmured. Elias shook his head. No, Lyra. You just look like the person you were always meant to be. As they left for the academy, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Ambassador, is she your adopted daughter? Lyra, do you trust humans now? But she just smiled shyly and said, I trust kindness. That single sentence spread like fire again, melting even the coldest hearts days past. And Lyra began learning human languages, history and science, but more importantly, she learned what it meant to belong. Students whispered about her. Some admired her courage, others mocked her, yet she never complained at night. She still remembered the lower streets, the hunger, the cold, and the day she almost sold the wallet one evening. Elias received a message marked confidential. It was from a senior Terran general. Ambassador Grant, it said. We advise caution. The girl is from the Velnari species, classified as hostiles in the last war. Protect her if you must. But keep your distance. Elias froze, the room suddenly quiet. He looked toward the academy courtyard where Lyra was laughing with other children under the lights. His heart heavy, he whispered to himself. She's not a weapon, she's a reminder. Yet he knew the revelation could destroy everything they had built. And somewhere deep in the slums of the lower city, a group of mysterious figures watched her broadcast. Their leader, cloaked in shadows, turned off the holo and said coldly, The Velnari survivor has been found. Bring her to me. Above them all, stars twinkled faintly, unaware that an act of simple honesty had now set destiny in motion. And soon, the galaxy would learn that the smallest spark of goodness can start a fire too bright to control. The hidden past weeks passed, and Lyra's name became a symbol across the stars. Schools taught lessons about her honesty. Humans and aliens quoted her words on kindness. Yet behind the bright news screens, quiet shadows began to move. Secrets that had slept for years were now waking. One night, while studying late in the academy library, Lyra came across an old archive file about the Velnari War. Curiosity pulled her in. She tapped the holographic screen and hundreds of images flickered. Burning cities, fleets in flames, soldiers in Terran armor. And among them, beings that looked like her own people. Blue-skinned, silver-eyed, terrified, her heart pounded. That's my race, she whispered. The file said the Velnari had started the war, that they attacked humans first, that they were wiped out after refusing peace. Her hands trembled. She didn't remember any of that. Only flashes, screams, fire. Her mother's arms carrying her through smoke. A bright explosion swallowing the sky. She gasped and closed her eyes, tears streaming silently. When Elias found her hours later, she was still sitting there, pale and shaking. Lyra? He said softly. She turned to him, eyes full of pain. They said my people were monsters. Her voice cracked. Is that true? Elias hesitated, his throat tightening. The war was long ago, Lyra. No one really knows the full truth anymore. But she saw the worry in his eyes, the kind that told her he knew more than he wanted to say. That night she couldn't sleep. Memories came in broken flashes, soldiers shouting, her mother's voice crying her name, and something bright and terrible falling from the sky. She woke up screaming, her hands glowing faintly with a blue shimmer, energy she couldn't control. The room sensors beeped an alarm. Guards rushed in. Elias followed quickly. It's all right, stand down, he ordered, wrapping a blanket around her. You're safe now. But the rumors spread like wildfire again. The alien girl has powers. She's not harmless within days. Anti-alien channels called for her removal from the academy. Some claimed she was a weapon left from the war. Even her classmates started avoiding her. Inside the embassy, Elias argued fiercely with the Human Council envoy. She's a child, not a threat, he said. Slamming his hand on the desk, the envoy replied coldly, Then explain the energy readings, Ambassador. We've seen the scans. Her DNA matches classified Velnari military patterns. Elias clenched his fists. Those are the same patterns every Velnari child has. It doesn't make her a soldier. But he knew deep inside that this revelation had changed everything. Lyra overheard their conversation from the hallway. Her heart sinking, she ran out into the night, through the rain-soaked streets, past the embassy guards calling after her. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't stay. Every voice in her mind screamed that she was a danger to those who helped her. By morning, Elias discovered her disappearance. The embassy was in chaos. Security drones searched every district. He sent urgent messages to local patrols. "Find her before the media does," he commanded, his voice shaking with worry. Meanwhile, in the lower levels of the city, Lyra found herself back where it all began. The cold streets, the flickering lights, the smell of smoke and oil. People stared at her suspiciously, recognizing her face from the broadcasts. Some shouted insults, others threw scraps. "So the famous girl comes home?" someone sneered. She kept walking silently, hiding her glowing hands under her cloak. As she sat beneath a broken bridge, a group of strangers approached, their eyes sharp, their skin the same blue hue as hers. One stepped forward, tall and scarred. "You are one of us," he said quietly. "You carry the mark of the old blood." She looked up in shock. "You're Velnari?" The man nodded. Survivors scattered and hunted. They took her to an old underground shelter lit by blue lanterns. Dozens of Velnari refugees lived there. Thin and afraid, yet when they saw her, they bowed slightly. "You're the girl from the broadcasts," one whispered. "You returned the human's wallet," another added. "You showed mercy." Lyra was confused. "Why are you hiding?" The leader frowned. "Because mercy doesn't protect us, child. Humans do not forgive easily." Lyra shook her head. "Elias is not like that. He helped me." But the leader's eyes hardened. "Elias Grant? The same man who signed the peace accords that condemned our homeworld?" She froze, unable to speak. He continued coldly. "He may be kind to you, but his government burned our skies back at the embassy." Elias stared at the map of the city, red dots marking the search zones. "Every passing hour felt like failure," Ramos said quietly. "Sir, maybe she doesn't want to be found." Elias turned sharply. "She's just scared like any child would be." But in his heart, guilt began to grow. He had signed those accords years ago, believing it would end the war, never realizing what it cost. Days passed. Lyra stayed with the refugees, torn between two worlds, the kindness of one human and the pain of her people. She sat by the fire, listening to stories of lost homes and shattered families. Finally, she whispered, "Maybe. I can change it," the leader frowned. "Change what?" She looked up, her eyes glowing faintly again. "The truth." That night, she stole a small data crystal from the leader's tent, an old war log recorded by Velnari officers. It contained proof that the war had been provoked, that humans were manipulated by a corporate alliance seeking resources. Her heart raced. She knew this could clear her people's name, but it also meant exposing powerful enemies. She hid the crystal in her pocket and whispered into the wind, "Elias, I'll make you see the truth." Then she disappeared into the night, determined, frightened, but stronger than ever before. Far above the city in the embassy tower, Elias stood by the window, rain tapping against the glass. He whispered to himself, "Lyra, wherever you are, I'll find you." And somewhere in the distance, the stars flickered brighter as if listening, because destiny had begun to move again, and soon, the galaxy would learn that truth cannot stay buried forever. The search across the stars. The rain had not stopped for 3 nights. Lightning crawled across the skies of the galactic capital like burning veins. And inside the Terran embassy, Ambassador Elias Grant had not slept. The command center screens glowed with hundreds of search feeds, each showing a different corner of the city. Drones hovered through alleys. Patrols scanned the lower decks, but there was still no sign of Lyra. He stood before the main window, hands clasped tightly behind his back. His reflection looked older, heavier, tired from guilt. "She trusted me," he whispered under his breath. Ramos entered quietly, holding a data pad. "Sir, we've covered every registered sector, nothing yet. But the scanners picked up unusual energy signatures in the old Undercity." Elias turned sharply. "Energy?" Ramos nodded. "Velnari frequency, sir." Elias didn't wait for orders. He grabbed his coat. "Prepare the shuttle." "I'm going down there myself," Ramos hesitated. "But the council," Can remove me later, Elias interrupted, his tone like steel. Right now I'm not a diplomat. I'm a man trying to save a child far below. In the ruined tunnels of the Undercity, Lyra was on the move again. She had left the Velnari hideout after stealing the war log, her cloak soaked with rain, her feet bleeding from the rough metal floor in her pocket. The small crystal pulsed faintly with blue light. She knew it held proof that could change everything, yet every shadow made her heart race. Bounty hunters were already looking for her. When she turned a corner, she saw a flash. A drone scanning beam swept across the walls. She ducked behind a pile of junk. Holding her breath, above her, voices echoed. She's here somewhere. The council wants her alive. Another voice laughed darkly. Alive pays double, dead's easier, her pulse thundered. She waited until they passed, then slipped into a maintenance shaft. Climbing upward toward the upper city at the same time, Elias's shuttle cut through the storm clouds, bright beams slicing through the darkness. Inside he sat silently, replaying the night he first met Lyra, her small hands holding his wallet, her trembling voice saying, "Because it wasn't mine." Those words kept him going. When the shuttle landed, the air was thick with smoke and rust. Elias stepped out, boots splashing in muddy puddles. The place smelled of old oil and fear. Split into teams, he ordered his guards. "Search every sector," his communicator crackled. "Sir, Council Command is ordering you to return." "They've declared the girl a Class Delta risk." Elias clenched his jaw. "Then tell them I resign," and cut the link, deep in the tunnels. Lyra finally reached a small service door leading to the outer industrial district. Her body ached, but she pushed forward, whispering to herself, "Just a little more." She could see the city lights glowing faintly above, then suddenly she heard footsteps. Heavy, mechanical. The bounty hunters had found her. Blaster fire tore through the metal walls. Sparks exploded around her. She screamed and ran, the crystal clutched tightly in her palm. One of the hunters shouted, "Corner her!" Another aimed, "No witnesses." A bolt grazed her shoulder. She fell, pain shooting through her arm. Just as one hunter raised his weapon for the final shot, a blinding light filled the corridor, a Terran shuttle descending from above, wind and dust blasting through the tunnel. The hunters covered their eyes, and from the light stepped Elias Grant, his coat whipping in the storm, his voice like thunder. "You'll lower your weapons or I'll lower you." The hunters hesitated. "Ambassador, this isn't your concern," one shouted. Elias raised his pulse pistol. "She's my only concern," before they could react. His guard stormed in. Blaster beams flashed. Echoing through the tunnel, the fight was short, loud, and fierce. When the smoke cleared, the hunters were down, and Elias ran to Lyra's side. She looked up weakly, her eyes glassy with pain. You came." Elias knelt beside her, pressing a med patch to her wound. "Of course I came. You didn't think I'd let the galaxy take you, did you?" She tried to smile, but tears rolled down her cheeks instead. "I have something," she whispered, pulling the small crystal from her pocket. "It's proof. Proof the war wasn't our fault." Elias froze, taking it gently. "Where did you get this?" "From my people," she murmured. "It shows who started it." Humans were lied to. He looked at the glowing crystal, realizing what it meant. Decades of guilt. Wars and hatred could end or explode again, depending on how this truth was revealed. "You've done more than I ever could," he whispered, lifting her into his arms. As they reached the surface, the storm began to fade, rain washing away the grime of the streets. Sirens wailed in the distance. The Galactic Council's security forces were already inbound. Elias knew what that meant. "They'll come for us both," Ramos warned through the comm. "Orders are clear. Containment or elimination." Elias looked at Lyra, unconscious but breathing, and replied, "Then we won't run. We'll show them the truth." The shuttle roared upward into the sky, breaking through the clouds, lightning reflecting on its hull inside. Elias uploaded the data crystal to his ship system. Holograms of the past war appeared. Terran generals shaking hands with corporate executives. False flags, forged transmissions, it was undeniable evidence. As the capital city lights came into view, Elias looked out the window, his heart steady now. "You gave me back my soul, Lyra," he whispered. "Now it's my turn to fight for yours." Below them, in the shadows they left behind, the surviving bounty hunter crawled to his communicator, blood dripping from his arm. "They've got the crystal," he hissed to his unseen employer. "They're heading to the council." The reply came cold and sharp. then stop them, at any cost, and so the chase began, across the sky of a restless world, where truth and lies were finally about to collide, and where one man and one alien girl were about to change what the galaxy believed forever. The truth that changes everything. The night sky over the galactic capital was alive with light. Terran security ships streaked across the horizon like falling stars. Alarms echoed from every sector. The Council had gone into lockdown. They had seen the data transmission from Ambassador Elias Grant's shuttle, and the galaxy was about to learn a truth buried for decades. Inside the shuttle, Lyra slowly opened her eyes, her head resting on Elias's shoulder. Pain pulsed through her arm, but she managed a weak smile. "We made it," she whispered. Elias nodded, his face pale but steady. "Almost, but once the Council sees this data, there's no turning back." He looked out the window. The massive floating spires of the Galactic Council Tower glowed ahead like blades of light piercing the clouds. In the control room below, hundreds of delegates and officers were shouting. The image of Elias's transmission flashing on the central screen. Documents, war logs, and recordings showing that the Velnari War was built on lies. The Terran High Command had been manipulated by corporate giants that wanted Velnari resources. The truth was undeniable, but too many had built their power on that lie. As Elias's shuttle descended, Council defense drones surrounded it. Warning lights blinking red. Unidentified transmission source. "Stand down," came a robotic voice. Elias pressed the comm. "This is Ambassador Grant. I have proof that the Velnari genocide was manufactured." Static crackled. Then silence, the voice replied coldly. "Your access is revoked, Ambassador. Surrender the data immediately." Elias smiled grimly. "That's not going to happen." He turned to Lyra. "Listen carefully when we land. They might try to separate us, whatever happens. Don't let them take the crystal." She gripped it tightly, her hands glowing faintly. "I won't." Her voice trembled, but her eyes were filled with courage. The shuttle landed on the platform, surrounded by armed guards. Flashes of light from media drones flickered in the air. The whole galaxy was watching live. Elias stepped out first, raising his hands. "I'm not here to fight," he said. "I'm here to tell the truth." Lyra followed him slowly. The crowd gasped. She looked fragile, yet her presence felt powerful. Like the calm before a storm, Counselor Varric, the reptilian ambassador from earlier, hissed through the broadcast. "This is treason, Ambassador Grant. Spreading false data against humanity." Elias looked straight into the cameras, then let every citizen decide for themselves. With one motion, he activated the broadcast, the crystal in Lyra's hand glowing brighter. Across the galaxy, from mining colonies to deep space ships, people stopped to watch. The holographic feed showed evidence after evidence. Intercepted orders, falsified attack reports, hidden recordings of generals admitting to framing the Velnari, and finally a video of Elias's younger self, signing the peace accord that unknowingly condemned an innocent race. The hall fell silent. The truth was out, there was no denying it. Elias's voice echoed through the chamber, calm but filled with emotion. "I believed I was ending a war, but I was ending a people. Today I ask forgiveness, not as a diplomat, but as a human being." Lyra stepped forward, her small voice trembling yet strong. "My people were never your enemies, we were just afraid. And you destroyed us because fear is easier than understanding." The silence shattered when someone shouted, "She's manipulating him." A guard raised his weapon. The blast fired and everything slowed. Elias moved instantly, pushing Lyra out of the way. The energy bolt struck his shoulder. He fell to one knee, smoke rising from his uniform. Lyra screamed, "No!" Her hands glowed bright blue, the energy bursting outward in a shockwave that knocked the guards back without harming them. The crowd froze in awe. Cameras captured it all. The little alien girl shielding a wounded human diplomat. Tears running down her face as she said, "You see? Even when you hurt us, we protect you." Her words echoed through the chamber like thunder. Elias coughed, trying to stand. "Lyra, finish it." She nodded, lifting the crystal toward the main projector. A beam of light exploded upward, projecting her face across every world. Her voice calm now. "I am Lyra of the Velnari, and I forgive you not because you deserve it, but because hate ends where truth begins." Across countless worlds, humans and aliens watched in silence. Some cried, others stood stunned, and for the first time in centuries the galaxy felt something new. Shame and hope both at once. The council chair, An ancient being with glass-like skin rose slowly. The council recognizes this evidence as valid, he declared, his voice trembling. From this moment, the Velnari are absolved of all crimes, and the corporations responsible shall face judgment. Applause erupted. Shouts of anger and joy collided. History was rewriting itself before their eyes. Elias collapsed as medics rushed in. Lyra knelt beside him, clutching his hand. "You did it," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "No, Lyra, you did. You reminded us what it means to be human." His voice faded, but his eyes shone with pride. Outside the council tower, thousands of people gathered holding candles. Humans and aliens side by side chanting her name, Lyra, Lyra, Lyra. The night sky glowed with light from their candles. A symbol of unity the galaxy hadn't seen in generations, but somewhere far away, in the dark chambers of the corporate syndicates exposed by the broadcast, cold eyes watched the feed. "She's dangerous," one voice said. "More dangerous than the war itself," another replied. "Then we erase her." The screen went black in the council infirmary. Lyra stood at the window watching the sunrise, her reflection mixing with the dawn. She whispered softly, "Truth hurts, but it heals too." And as the light touched her face, she knew that this was only the beginning, because even after truth comes peace, there are always those who fear both. The girl who changed the galaxy. The morning after the council verdict, the galaxy felt different. Quiet, heavy, and alive all at once across 1,000 worlds. People woke to see the same headline glowing across their hollow screens. The Velnari were innocent. The lie that had shaped generations was gone. Truth had broken free. And one small alien girl had done what armies never could. She had made humanity look in the mirror again. Inside the medical wing of the council tower, Elias Grant lay on a recovery bed, his shoulder wrapped in white nanobandages, tubes softly humming beside him. Sunlight streamed through the window, painting golden patterns on the walls. Lyra sat quietly by his side, her tiny hand wrapped around his. She hadn't moved for hours, afraid that if she did, the world would change again when he finally opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was her face, tired, tear-streaked, but smiling. "Still here?" he whispered. She nodded. "You promised you wouldn't leave before breakfast." He chuckled weakly. "Then I guess I'd better stay." For a while, neither spoke. The silence between them was soft, almost sacred. The sound of machines faded beneath the distant hum of the city outside. Finally, Elias said, "You know, I used to think peace was built by treaties and weapons, but you showed me it starts with honesty." Lyra looked down. "I didn't do much." He shook his head. "You did everything." Outside the tower, crowds gathered. Humans and aliens standing shoulder to shoulder, holding banners that read, "One truth, one future." Journalists called it the Day of Healing. Statues of old war heroes were covered with flowers, and for the first time, Velnari children were allowed to attend human schools without guards. As days turned into weeks, trials began for those who had orchestrated the war. Powerful leaders faced justice. Their confessions broadcast across the galaxy. Some pleaded ignorance, others broke down in guilt. But the people had already chosen their symbol of truth. Not a general, not a president, but a small alien girl with silver eyes. The council offered Lyra a scholarship, then a seat in the new Galactic Unity program. And by the time she turned 16, she had become the youngest representative in history. They gave her a title, Ambassador of Hope. But to the people, she was simply Lyra, the honest star. On the day of her inauguration, the grand chamber of the council overflowed with light. Millions watched the ceremony broadcast live across every colony. Banners of both human and Velnari colors waved side by side. And as the music faded, Lyra stepped onto the stage. Her heart racing, Elias, now retired but sitting proudly in the front row, gave her a nod of encouragement. She took a deep breath and began to speak, her voice calm but full of warmth. "I was once a beggar on the street," she said. "Hungry, cold, and invisible, I found a wallet that could have fed me for months. But instead I returned it. I didn't know that choice would change my life. I didn't know it would change your lives too." The crowd listened in complete silence. Her words flowed like light. "I learned that truth has power, not because it destroys lies, but because it gives people a chance to heal. We all bleed the same color when we're hurt. We all smile the same when we're loved. So why should we fight over what we look like?" Her silver eyes shimmered with tears as she continued. "If one human and one alien can choose kindness, then anyone can." The chamber erupted in applause, echoes filling the domes and corridors of the council tower outside. Fireworks lit the night sky, not in celebration of war or conquest, but of peace in distant worlds. Miners stopped their drills to watch her speech. Soldiers laid down their weapons for a moment, and children of every race drew stars on walls, writing her name beneath them. After the ceremony, Lyra walked alone into the garden behind the tower, the same peace garden where she once asked Elias if her people would ever have a plant there. Now in the center of the field, a small blue flower stood glowing softly under the twin suns, its petals reflecting her light. She knelt down and smiled, whispering, "We finally do." Elias joined her, walking slowly with his cane. "You did it," he said quietly. She shook her head. "No, we did." He smiled. "Then let's promise never to forget." She reached out her hand, and he took it, their fingers closing over the stem of the glowing flower, a symbol of all they had lost and everything they had gained. Far above them, the galaxy turned silently, vast and endless, but not as cold as before, because somewhere in its heart, a single act of kindness had changed its course forever. In the years that followed, people across planets celebrated the Day of the Honest Star. Statues of Lyra and Elias stood together in every capital, reminding all species that peace begins not with power, but with one simple choice: to do what is right when no one is watching. And though centuries would pass and new wars would rise and fall, the legend would remain, whispered in every language, told to every child who looked up at the stars and wondered if goodness still mattered. They would answer, yes, it does, because once, a homeless alien girl returned a human's wallet, and the galaxy never forgot.